Okay, people, I am back. But not only am I back, I'm late. So, I have to apologize for that. Wasn't my intention, as I've said before in these other videos. I'm a bit of a slow reader, but that's not the only reason. The book pick today was kind of hard, let's say, to verbalize. So I'm gonna give it a go. And now that I'm saying all that, I realized that some of these are going to be rewatched in the future. So to them, it's not late. So maybe I just shouldn't have said anything. What's done is done. Today, I'm going to talk about Pride and Prejudice. That's right. The, uh, the legendary Pride and Prejudice. The granddaddy of almost all romance. Is it worth it? Should you read it? What did I think? Let's get into it. I read it on Kindle for the first time. And when you get it on Kindle or whatever the Apple Store one is, I'm assuming Google too. This bad boy is free, people. You can get this book for absolutely no money, just sheer effort, just a couple clicks away and it's yours. So, factor that in. I'm sure a lot of you own it. I don't own it, a physical copy. I've read it. Should you go? Should you bother with this free book, right? And I would say yes. I am giving this 5 stars. It's a 5 book. I think all readers will definitely enjoy it, but even your friends, your mongrel friends who, don't read for some reason, I think even a normal casual person can read this, thoroughly enjoy it. Okay, so if you haven't read it, get out there, get it. Tell your friends to get it, and everyone enjoy this book. It's completely tremendous. But on rereading it, and then, thinking of sitting down for this, it's sort of difficult to explain why this book is so popular. Um, it's a romance book to start, right? Follows all the rules of romance. But nothing happens per se, right? Typically in books, right? We get them and it's the middle of a war. There's some murder investigation. We're going to go into space. Things are going to explode. You know, kind of like movies. There's some crux of an issue that's driving us. But here, we don't have anything so perilous. There's no massive overarching, there's no Napoleon, none of that. It's sort of like a slice of life book, right? Your intro line is one of the best intros of any book ever. It sets the stage, gives a bit of the humor, everyone's motivations, all wrapped up almost at once. What does it say? Uh, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I mean, first line, it's already kind of silly, right? But another element to this book that you have to get for it to work is British culture. Yeah? Everybody, everywhere has its cultures and they all have their rules. But some of them don't work as well for romance as others, I would think. You have heavier romances, right? Where Romeo and Juliet type, where everyone just ends up dead, right? Some of those work better. I've seen some romance stuff like from what is it, K-dramas, Korea. Some of those have elements I don't like. In the past, their modern ones, they really hit the nail on the head. But the British, their rules, right? How their society functions. Um, the way they interact, they don't typically like say an old western, right? Old West. Americans like to fight. Will punch people, this sort of thing. Doesn't always work for romance. You don't want violence around, right? It's like a particular meal. Can't be too salty. It can't be too crunchy. It has to be just right. And it seems like the British get it just right. And this book is very British. We have all these people in this big estate. You know, there's another estate. They're going over each other's houses. Insults can be like as small as like not dancing with someone, right? All these, it's somewhere in the 1800s or 1700s. I don't know when. It doesn't even really matter. It doesn't even really come up. The timing. You could make probably a full modern one, and it'd hold up just as well. Um, you don't even get many descriptors, right? It's it's not even like a rush to dialogue. It's like you dive in right into the deep end. We're not we don't talk about the setting really. The house, we don't get a description really of the house. Nothing in depth like that, right? It's really just conversational. But you end up feeling like you're sitting at these people's table, like it's the same like I said, slice of life. You could go over a bunch of friends' house and sit, and you don't even have to say anything sometimes. And you're hearing all these events of things that happened at such and such's work, or with such and such who so and so likes, and so on and so forth. And it was an eventful evening. But if you try to tell somebody, I'm like, well, we went and sat on a couch. They're like, I don't want to read that. But if you're a good writer, you do want to read it, right? So the first character we're introduced to is a Mr. Bingley. He's our man in want of a wife, even though he doesn't know it, right? And he just got an estate down the way, and he's got money. And our person talking is the mother of these five girls, and she's trying to get them married. Now, again, if you lay it down like that, it sounds harsh. Do they just care about money? Are they just trying to get their daughter? No, they're not like arranged marriages or anything of this nature. And the way they describe his money is not in the sense like he's rich, I got a bag of rich guy. It's more like a sign of how put together he is as a man, if that makes sense. Right? It's old and school book, so that's the values that they had. But the mom's not going to force any of her daughters, neither is the dad. They're not going to force marriage on their daughters in this book. They just assume, I mean, they have five daughters, and he's a man. Surely he's going to like one of them, and they're going to like him. You know? They're trying to up their odds. And if they never meet, they can't fall in love. So obviously we have to make them meet. And that's an example of what I'm saying. We have like a whole chapter or maybe two dealing with arranging the meeting like a dinner party. Not even just like you have a new neighbor that comes in, you just go over there and like, hey, new neighbor, what's going on? It's not a big deal. But in this era, in this time, it is a big deal. Everyone will read into what you're doing. And if you're just too blatant with it, you're like, oh, he's classless. I'm not going to hang out with him. And you ruin the whole situation, right? You can't be crass, right? Which helps a romance, everyone with some dignity, right? So, it's there's a fun to do with just arranging this meeting. And it has some fun, sort of a drier humor. No, not, there's not these big jokes. It's not that kind of humor. It's very realistic. It's kind of like you would have fun with your friends. Some of them would say fun stuff or do fun stuff, but it's nothing you would write down to tell other people, like, and then he said the squirrel was fat. Like, who cares? I don't know. I didn't see the squirrel. You're not painting the picture. I'm like, no, I'm not painting it. You had to have been there. That's one of these. It's putting you where you had to have been to enjoy it. So when you go through this, and it's very quick. It does it very quick where you get the sense, right? These aren't arranged marriages. They're not forced. No one's tricking anyone really. But there's your Mr. Bingley. Good-looking guy. Got a little scratch. And I said she had 5 daughters, right? I'm not going to go through every moment in the book, but I'm going to talk to you about the daughters because they're like, a lot of this is archetypal, right? Where it seems like Jane Austen figured it all out in one book, and everyone else sort of can follow these rules for their romance. There's only a few romance elements that are missing, but you can live without them. We have, I said Mr. Bingley. We have Elizabeth. This is our protagonist. This is who I would say most of the ladies reading relate to in their minds the best. She is, again, the ideal. Attractive, witty, and intelligent, right? Because it's not enough just to be smart. You gotta be able to roll with people. And that's one of the rules to romance. You see a bunch of romance books, or I watch a bunch of K dramas, and they're all this. You're not the prettiest girl, because for reasons I don't know, they never go with the prettiest in the story. It's like the reader, maybe ladies, tell me if I'm wrong. It's like the ladies don't relate to the prettiest girl in class, so to speak. So she's not the prettiest, but she's clearly not ugly, because no one wants to be ugly, right? It's sort of, what is this? Not a wish fulfillment, but you want to buy in somewhere, right? So she's the buy-in, and that's how ladies like to buy in. She's not the prettiest. She's not the ugliest. She's very pretty. She's very smart, witty, because I can roll in any conversation. And you like to be smart enough to be above things, but not haughty, right? You need that porridge just right, and she's just right. We have her older sister, Jane. Jane is the prettiest. But again, more of the rules for romance. She's the prettiest, but she's a little naive, where, she can't. What is it when somebody's trying to be sneaky? Our Elizabeth sees the sneak because, she's smarter. Gotta have something. You can't have everything. It's like the power scaling in Naruto or something, like in an anime. You have a super good punch, but you can only do it like 3 times, this kind of thing. It's power scaling, so the prettiest can't have everything. Otherwise, no one's having fun. We have Mary Bennet, the middle child. I mean, these aren't my words. She's like the most plain here. Oh my, that's kind of savage when you call somebody plain, but that's how they roll. She's plain, and she's book smart, right? She's a nerd. She's the nerd here. Which, it's always kind of rough when when I read books as someone who loves to read, where they're like, Here's the dopey guy who just likes to read. I'm like, that's kind of rough. I like to read. But for whatever reason, I just don't tie myself to that person, right? I end up tying myself to the cooler guy. Can't help it. But I guess it's accurate in some senses, right? Athletes look better than readers. It's just rough. Like, bro, you ain't got to do me dirty like that. There's Kitty Bennett, who's just silly. She's a silly girl. That's what they say. She's not trying to be. She's not trying to grow up too quick. And then there's Lydia, the youngest. They say silly and headstrong, and she causes a scandal, right? It's sort of like a runaway marriage kind of thing. It's a big to do in the book. But you're like, there's all these names. Like I said, you follow along almost purely by the dialogue. Jane Austen doesn't take a lot of time describing what these women look like, what these ladies look like. She lets the personality drive their look, right? They're going to look a certain way in your mind by these things, right? Like if I described a swimmer, swimmers are sort of long, elongated, thin, maybe sort of sun tanned a little. Runners look a little shorter, more muscular. She lets what they say drive how they look. She hardly ever describes them. She describes the guys, though. Our Mr. Bingley, good-looking guy. Better looking, though, is a one Mr. Darcy. And that's where things start to get spicy. That's where we start to have some fun, right? Mr. Darcy's better looking than Mr. Bingley. Maybe a little taller, dark hair, richer, always a plus. But problem, again, romance, power scaling. He's standoffish. So much so that even though he's better looking, none of the ladies end up liking him by the end of the evening. He's too cold. He thinks he's better than everyone, and I don't like him. And there's even it's one of the coldest moments in this where it's like he's standing here and our protagonist Elizabeth's not far away. And Bingley's like, bro, dance with somebody. There's all these ladies. And he's like, I don't want to. And then he literally turns and looks at her. Then turns back to his friend, like in earshot. Basically, he's like, there's no one here worthy of dancing with. Like, she can overhear this crap. And of course, the rumor spreads like hotcakes. It's like, what is this book like? This book is like a freaking season of The Real Housewives. A lot of gossip, a lot of back talk, a lot of room, sitting in rooms talking, a lot of innuendo, like this person doesn't like me, that person likes me. But that was one of the coldest moves I ever saw. It is hilarious. And we have this sort of back and forth over the course of some time. Even that in this book, the jump cuts. She doesn't let. I'm not gonna. She's like Jane Austen. Doesn't try and fill in every moment in between. If a month goes by, she just starts another chapter and it's like a month later, and then we're back to where we were in that room 5 minutes ago. It's a lot like real life. If somebody makes you mad, and then time goes by and you meet them again, you're not mad at them. You're just like, oh, I'm back to being mad at you. Right? It's very funny how time works like that, and it's written that way. But old Mr. Darcy, we have this back and forth between him and Elizabeth. Right? Where he'll say a barb and she'll just sling that barb right back at him. And then he ends up captivated. Captivated by her intellect, her wittiness. Starts to appreciate the beauty that's there. He talks about her eyes and this kind of thing. And she at first goes from like, I don't like you at all, to sort of, maybe he ain't half bad, if you know what I mean. The drama the drama here is, and it's sort of a societal thing, right? Where there are all these soldiers around. They look great in their uniforms, and the girls go and, flirt a little bit. But the Lydia, the youngest one, just YOLOs into it. She's like, I'm going to marry me an officer. That's just what I'm going to do. And they scamper off like she runs away kind of situation. And again, to a modern reader, much younger than she should. If you remake this movie, she ain't. I think they have her 16 running off, getting married, right? So we in modern society see that different and different than they did in was it 1700s, Napoleonic times, whatever that is. Maybe a little. I feel like it's around there. 17, 1800s, I don't know. Not illegal then. So, if you got to take into account when it was written for the author there. But they scamper off, and it could like ruin the family, right? That this shame would come on the family. They wouldn't be able to show themselves in society. That kind of thing where your standing in society matters so much is what makes a lot of the rules play so well. The Britishness of it in a romance, right? If you brush someone off, it's not just you brush that person off. That person then talks about it around town, and next thing you know, people are giving you the cold shoulder, and now you're on the outs. Ramifications, romance needs these ramifications to work effectively. Romance needs, I feel it works best with some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some chastity, right? You can't have just everyone in bed with everyone and the romance be better. It just, some of the shine comes off, right? I feel like in sort of Norse tales that I've read, that's not that big of an issue, right? You'll have a lady marry a guy, have kids with him, or just marry him, and then he dies. Marry another one, have kids with that one. Then another one comes, so she'll be married like 3 times. And in sort of Nordic tales, this isn't a negative in any kind of a way. This sort of idea comes from your King Arthur, Arthurian, right? Which is a lot built. The British built up a lot of that. But I think it works better, right? What is it? The romance is just a little bit sweeter, which is why this book is so long lasting and maybe sort of the Norse tales no one knows about. On top of the weird long names, right? So you have that chastity, that you're not going to have anyone slapping people, yelling, because shame. These sort of elements are needed. But you also need some buy-in. And what do I mean by that? I was saying earlier, our ladies might, in their minds, associate themselves with an Elizabeth, right? But I think the guys, male readers, might sort of could see themselves as Mr. Bingley. Even if you're not tall, dark, and handsome, or stupid rich, right? It's how he acts. That he's not ashamed to stand his ground in society. That he isn't ruled by women, right? Like if we go to Romeo and Juliet, he sees Juliet. Now, yes, it's love, but if you read the story, he loves someone else like 5 minutes before. And this is a man who can be swayed by the beauty of women, let's say. Romeo. That's why I think most guys, I think it's Romeo and Juliet's more popular with the ladies than with the guys. I would say in my head. They're both popular. I'm not trying to say like one's crap. I'm just saying that style. So here, this style that he would look at the Elizabeth and be able to brush her off. A lot of guys can't brush women off, right? So there's some buy-in here with that, where you could pretend in your mind to be a Mr. Bingley. I mean, Mr. Darcy. Yeah, women don't affect me. I'm true to my course. But then also, what we want is the buy-in where they come together as well. The guy would say like Bingley, I don't want some vain person. I don't want someone after my money. I want someone who cares, who's smart. This compliment. And that's what she ends up being for him, right? So you have buy-in from both sides, which I think some Harlequins forget. If you read modern Harlequins, they forget to have that buy-in on the man side as well, the male side, not just the feminine side. And these aren't hard, fast rules, right? You can buy into whoever you want. You can like whoever you want in the book. But generally, you need some kind of thread, some kind of something that keeps a book this old, this current. And it is current. Even if, like I said, it's been remade in like 6 different movies. You could remake it right now with all modern everything, cell phones, the works. It would still function because those rules are in there, right? All right, how long was this one? Oh, kind of short. I don't know. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna let it go short. I'm gonna do some ad bit here at the end. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how much. Probably annoys people, right? But I gotta try and do it. This book's free. Uh, you know, for the cost, you can't go wrong. It really is more than the sum of its parts. It's more than a dinner party. It's more than a conversation with people, right? You really feel the whole slice of life nature of it. So I strongly recommend everyone go read it. I am sorry that I'm late. I'm going to try not to be late from now on. It's a really fun book, right? I mean, again, without going through every little. If I went through every little thing, you'd just read the book, right? I know other books, it matters. When, like, Napoleon crosses the Rhine, that in that moment mattered. There's no moments that matter in this book, but you remember all the moments, right? It's one of these type. So, short video, late video, apologetic video. I gotta make up for it somehow, right? I'll do like a week of 2 videos or something to make up for all these late videos. But thanks for watching. Go read the book if you haven't, and if you have and it's been a while, give it a reread. Have some fun. It's a real easy read. All right.